So I'm here at Lanima with the world-famous Willie Lebus from Bibendum Wine Limited, who's been putting together wine lists for quite a long time. So I thought he'd be the best person to tell us a little bit about the realities of putting together a restaurant wine list. Willie?
Rob, it's quite a complicated subject to talk about in a couple of minutes, but let's look at the background. The first thing is nothing easier than getting hold of a Robert Parker book and buying every single wine gets 100 points. That ain't what it's about. A wine list should be balanced. It's got to feature wines that people can afford, so price is certainly probably the key driver. The next driver is, what sort of style of restaurant have you got? Is it a brasserie? Is it a fine dining establishment? Third, and for me very important, is that a wine list has to live. So the smaller the wine list, the better. Very difficult to focus on a wine list, let's say, of 15 white wines, 15 reds, but it's a really good exercise. What do you have on it? First thing is, you've got to have some wines which you pour by the glass, which taste good and which give a really good variety of style and flavour. Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and other interesting white wine varieties, and maybe then on the red wine front do something like Pinot Noir, Bordeaux varieties and spicy red varieties.
The kind of things that people will recognise. And
I think the really key thing about wine compared to food is clearly you've got to make wine lists accessible to people who may not know a lot about wine, who might be scared of wine lists. How do you do that? Well, if you're like Lanima, where we are today, you have wonderful sommeliers, but most restaurants don't have sommeliers. It's all about educating both the people who are buying the wine as well as the staff who are selling it. So, in short, a wine list should contain nice, easy-drinking white wines with one or two different styles, maybe in Chardonnay, a non-oak Chardonnay, and an oak Chardonnay, and one or two other more interesting, funky wines. It shouldn't just be everyday wines which appeal to a wide variety of people. You've got to have some slightly differing styles there. Red wines, you want to have some light fruity wines, some medium-bodied wines, some heavier, more interesting, perhaps complex wines.
What about by the glass? What's your view on by the glass?
Well, my view about by the glass is that every single wine, ideally on the wine list, should be available by the glass.
Here, here.
Commercially, that's quite tricky. But what's wrong with it having much smaller wine lists and having a dynamic wine list which changes more often? For me, what we should all be doing now in restaurants in the UK and everywhere in the world is having small wine lists, everything available by the glass apart from, let's say, Chateau, goddamn expensive, which of course you can't, but by and large have half a dozen whites, half a dozen reds by the glass, which change a lot. That means that you don't have a problem with choosing, say, 3 different glasses white, 3 different glasses red during your meal. Fantastic.
So if you're in a restaurant like Lanima, focused on unusual great varieties, how do you sell some of the wines you've been tasting today?
Put them on by the glass and maybe put a health warning against, say, a Pierre di Rosso, which no one's ever heard of, but which people should try. If you don't put unusual wines, which no one's ever heard of, by the glass, you'll never sell them. So what the hell's the use of doing that? The answer is, take a risk. Work with the guy who's actually selling the wines and say, yeah, I'm happy to take a risk. You've got to take a risk with me. And the other thing, clearly on a wine list, the most important thing is, don't be greedy on what you charge. Something which I'm afraid not enough people are interested in doing. If you're good about how much you charge, you'll be repaid by people being more adventurous in what they're going to drink.
So if you're giving advice to a general consumer who doesn't know much about wine, coming into a restaurant like this, what's your advice to them in terms of choosing a wine?
First thing you do is ask for advice. The second thing you do is don't choose the cheapest wine on the list. Go just 1 or 2 up. Thirdly, if there's a wine available by the glass and you've never heard of it, try it, because by and large those are going to be the interesting wine that the chap or the girl who actually who's put the wine list together has decided are the wines which he wants you to drink. So the less usual, the stuff which you're not going to find, let's say, in your local supermarket, those are the wines to try and experiment and have fun. And ask, if you don't know, ask, because the guy you're buying the wine from should know a hell of a lot more than you do.
And if they don't,
shoot them.
Thank you, Willie. Cheers.
Pleasure.